Hello and welcome to Opinions My Own. My name is Paul Caulfield and I'm an adjunct professor at Fordham Law School. In addition, I've spent more than 20 years in the private sector, mostly in financial services. I began my career as a Manhattan district attorney. And over the course of my private sector career, I've worked in compliance, in risk, and in law. In this episode, we talked to a good friend of mine from Israel, Gad Abadi. And what we talk about is not money laundering. We do not talk about financial technologies to combat money laundering, but we talk about cybersecurity. Gadi brings both significant public sector, government sector, military sector experience, as well as private sector experience. What he and I did over the past few weeks is really talk about the practical application of effective risk management. That's been the hallmark of the course I teach with Zila, Acosta-Grimes at Fordham, is how you effectively manage the risks of financial crimes, not in theory, but in application. And sometimes that's disjointed with what regulators are looking for. And so this discussion that I have with Gad really is not a check the box exercise. And so the presentation, for those of you that are watching this as well as listening to it, you can see this is not a discussion for a company that is just starting its cyber journey. This is not really a conversation for the company that is on its journey and does not feel that it is prepared to handle any type of event. If you're in those types of companies, you will find this, I think, very simple, but also maybe terrifying. This is not a certification exercise. Companies can get certified. They can be NIST certified. They can get ISO certified. They also have regulatory requirements. Being in financial services, the SEC has a new notification requirement. The New York State, since 2017, has had a cybersecurity regulation. I was intimately involved as the chief risk officer of Israel's largest overseas financial services firm to comply with that in its infancy. And it was difficult. I've been managing risk for more than 15 years. Model risk, information technology risk, financial crimes risk, and cyber certainly was a new, terrifying risk, particularly as we've seen that it can have both government and private sector ramifications, as well as causing harm and even death. This is not a conversation for the line management. Line managers, if you're listening, I hope you find this helpful. But I'm really speaking, and Gadi and I will be speaking to the board members, those who are sitting at the top of the firm, and that is the chief executive officer. And something that we deliver here is the chief executive officer has to be involved, period. Hard stop, has to be involved. It cannot be designated to someone else to keep him or her apprised of what's going on. If that CEO is going to have someone in that seat, that CEO needs to be fully aware of what's going on as you move through the stages that we're going to describe here over the next few minutes. If you are in the United States, that executive in charge might be the CISO, might be the CIO, but the general counsel, the chief legal officer, has to be inextricably linked to the process for the sole purpose to start with, or attorney-client privileges, given the various risks that fall out when a cyber event occurs. There are some presumptions, and I want to talk through those presumptions first before Gadi and I begin. Number one, we are presuming that the company has all of its domain subject matter experts, meaning the CIO knows what she's doing, the CISO, the chief financial officer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we will talk about the head of public relations, the head of legal, the head of investor relations. And that really gets to the first point when we talk about executive cyber resilience, about teaming, what that means to have a full team should a cyber event occur. The beauty of my relationship with Gad is its simplicity, particularly when it comes to risk management. He'll talk about having a checklist or something very simple as opposed to full playbooks and programs. Do we need those? Of course we do. But it's the simplicity of understanding what you need to do and when, and making those decisions very quickly during those first few critical minutes and the first critical 24 hours. Third parties. This presumes you know who your third parties are, who your board is and how to get in touch with them. Law enforcement at the federal or state level, or even local. Your incident response team, if you have them on retainer, your outside attorneys. This presumes you have checked all of those boxes, and then we'll get into the teaming, the operational, and the black swan events. And lastly, and as I intimated, the executive in charge, the EIC. If it's not the CEO because of size and complexity and scale, then it's someone who is sitting right there and can really whisper in the CEO's ear in an instant. So first, why do organizations fall short when it comes to cybersecurity? Number one, we think that it's an IT issue. It's an information security issue. And if we encapsulate it in that and we manage it within that vacuum, then we'll be okay. As Gadi explains, we aren't. It is not a cyber issue, it's a business issue. Cyber risk is similar to other risks. I don't agree. I think these risks are not as tangible as certain operational risks are. These are new risks, and similar to the technologies that we're seeing, they're ever evolving. The standalone cybersecurity exercise, that has been the focus when you think beyond a program build. Well, exercise, well, do a tabletop. And as Gadi explains, it's not the exercise that matters, it's what you are able to do with it. And the most important part, learning from it and iterating and evolving. And so with that, we will welcome Gad Abadi and begin the program. Gadi, welcome. I'm so glad you can join us. For the listener, this is the week of April 15, 2024. Gadi's joining us from Tel Aviv, Israel. It's around 7, 8 o'clock at night there in Tel Aviv. We're months into the attack on Israel over the weekend. The reports around Iran firing more than 300 missiles directly into Israel. So, Gadi, you and your family remain well?
Well, we remain well. I must say that with the help of the US and other counterparties, most of those missiles didn't hit Israel. 99% of those missile drones, etc., were blocked even before they got into Israel. So we are all fine, and thank you for asking.
Yeah, my continued best wishes to everyone there. I don't think it is insignificant, the topic that we're talking about, even in light of the attacks and even in light of the missiles that had been fired directly at Israel. I think it's actually quite appropriate that we talk about cybersecurity and in these instances, cyber warfare. But the listener knows that you've come from the IDF, that we've worked together. But do me a favor, give a little bit about your professional military as well as private sector background, please.
Well, I'm a lieutenant colonel, active retired, and IDF officer. I was, I would say, a commander of a special unit that dealt with cyber defense issues. In the Army, of course, we fought against nation-state adversaries. It was very challenging ways because, as you know, Israel, and as you mentioned, is in a state of war. Of course, in these days, this is a high-impact war, but all the time there's war in our region, and we hope that there will be peace in near future. But that is the situation here. And after I retired 8 years ago, I started a role as a CISO in one of the largest banks here in Israel. And this big banking group worked domestically and abroad. And today I'm a VP of Cyber and Group Technology in the Phoenix Group, which is the largest financial and insurance company here in Israel.
What's the biggest difference, having been in the military, having been in the IDF as the CISO, and moving into the private sector? What are the biggest differences that you've seen there?
I think the logic behind the adversary. When I was a commander of a unit in the IDF of a cyber defense unit, the adversary didn't have ROI thinking. It was a fighting because the money that the nation has, it's not like a criminal gang that work in the cyber area. Today, when I am a CISO in the private sector, we see ROI thinking behind the adversary. And if I'll be practical, as a CISO in an investment company here in Israel, I see, well, I'm tackle a lot with ransomware attacks. And in ransomware, you want to, let's say, invest $500,000 in this cyber operation and get $10 million in ransom. But when you are dealing with cyber in the army with nation state adversaries, this equation doesn't live there. You see an attacks that their logic is how to take country and cut her system and put them out of the equation, and that's something that for example, in the army, an army without his system, without his computer system, will lose the war. Okay, all of the secrets will be leaked. So the main difference, I would say, is the ROI equation. And in the end of the way, it means that when I'm serving the army, I saw that the capabilities that the adversary had were higher than the one that you find in the private sector. I would say there is a gap of a year between the capability of nation state adversaries to the one that cyber criminal, the advanced one, has here in the private sector. So this 1 year capabilities is a huge difference.
Those with nation state, those with terrorist intentions,
Right.
are more advanced?
More advanced, much more advanced.
So let me ask you this.
Okay.
Looking at it from you as the CISO, what were the primary skills that you honed as CISO by the time that you were leaving the IDF? What were you, what were those, I can't even say core competencies, what were those expertise components to you as a CISO that were vital to the IDF and to Israel's security?
I would say three major ones. The first one is how to be prepared. How to be prepared for the fact that the adversary will be one step before you, and how you can compensate that in a very efficient way. And in the end of the way won't let him to gain all the things that he planned to. That's the first thing. Planning, preparing for the worst. The second issue is that how to manage a very sophisticated attack, and how to manage a lot of, I would say, units inside the army, and how to coordinate everything. So the coordination, the ability to manage all the coordination when dealing with major issues. And the third one, it's from the technical point of view. How do you I would say, eliminate those kind of sophisticated attack very fast, very efficient. We had to bring to the table a lot of capabilities, specifically how to handle with 0 days attacks. So those are the main three differences.
Let me focus you on the private sector then. As you moved into the private sector, and now you've been in the private sector for 8-9 years, what have you seen as the biggest challenge in the private sector?
I would say, and I'm talking as an all, okay? There are, of course, exceptions. But I think in the private sector, we don't prepare ourselves for the worst scenario in an efficient way. Look, I'm in the financial sector. The companies invest a lot in cyber technologies, personnel, etc. But when you're going to the management level, the ability of the organization to contain cyber crisis, although you invest a lot of money and resources and intentions, but still we know that whatever you will do, a cyber crisis can happen. So the way that you build your contingency plan, the way that you validate them, the way that you organize yourself to handle a cyber crisis under the neon lights, it's something which is lacking in the private sector. Most of the organization don't do it in an effective way and don't prepare themselves to the worst scenario.
Well, one thing I remember is when I was in Israel and we were first starting to work on our cybersecurity here in New York. You and I were on the streets walking from one of the buildings. We had about a 10-15 minute walk, and here I was, former prosecutor in governance, risk, compliance, and law, and just getting my feet wet with cybersecurity. And what I remember you telling me about the simplicity of what do you think are the most basic risks? Those are the ones you need to look at. The front door, as you said, making sure the USB ports, and it's boring but simple, but that's always struck me as one of like the hallmarks on the way that you approach things. And so this conversation, when we talk, we're not talking about, do you have the right firewalls? Do you have the right mobile device management? Do you have encryption? All of that is presumed that the listener's firm has that in place. All the technical chops are in full effect. What we're going to talk about, and this is what I really want to get from you, is those three areas where they've got it all, but can they then execute when the shit hits the fan? And right. So why don't you walk the listener through around those levels of resilience, and we can kind of pull them apart as you go through.
Okay. So when we are talking about how do you gain as an organization your resilience against cyber threats as a whole and cyber crisis specifically, preparing for the worst, I say that you need to build your capabilities on mature level in three main, I would say, building blocks. The first one is, I will call it the teaming, the ability of the management, each member of the management, to understand his role in cyber crisis, what he have to lead when the shit happens, as you said earlier. For example, the basic one, let's say what the CIO need to do, what the CISO need to do, but that's the basic one. But let's think what the HR need to do. Let's talk what about the PR need to do, because, for example, the reputation is something which is, I would say, the most important thing, specifically in the financial sector. Let's say that you have a cyber crisis in a financial company. The customer asks himself, hey, can I leave my money in that company? So the way that you are going to deal with the crisis on the PR issues is crucial, because in the end of the day, I will tell you something that maybe will shock you. The CIO and the CISO, in the end of the day, will contain the incident. But will you have customer in your company? That's another question. So that's something that you need to think of. And each management level at the teaming need to understand, hey, that's my role. I'm going to lead those and those issues. That's the KPIs. That's what the CEO expects of me. And now we can work between ourselves, because what's unique in cyber, that it's deal with the entire organization. It's not only technological, it's not only business, it's an all arounder, I would say, challenge. Then
the way I've understood it is, if you've written all of the executive titles, COO, Chief Risk Officer, General Counsel, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, the ones that are the boldest names are the CIO and the CISO. We've all presumed that they're going to know the right thing, and that's actually not the focus of what you're bringing right here. It's of course they know their job, but can you make the thinly lined CEO more and more bold? Because of course the accountability sits with the CEO, but can he or she get to a point where she's as fluid? And then same thing, making the other C-suite titles just as firm and bold face names as the CIO and the CISOs. Is that a fair imagery?
Exactly that. And because of that, I ran from the CISO and the CIO examples to other management members that usually you can find in a big firms, and not only in big firms, because in the end of the day, the approach to deal with cyber crisis is an holistic one. It's business-wise, it's technological-wise, it's you and the regulators. So it's something that you have to look at it from a broader point of view, and not only from a technical point of view. That's something that a lot of organizations don't understand. So they are not building their resilient contingency plan in the right manner. It's a problem of the CISO. It's a problem of the CIO. No, it's the company challenge, and it's an holistic one.
So let's now presume that we've identified everyone. They know what their individual executive role is. They also know what their team's role is into that crisis management organ, right? Then what's the next step?
The next step, I'm calling it operational. So let's continue with our PR, VP PR, okay? Example. In the end of the day, he's the one who is in charge. He's the higher rank, but he cannot work alone. He needs to have a checklist for him as a one, but for his I would say staff that will help him to build what is the situational awareness in the PR area. So he has sub-manager that are under him, working under him. They need to work also like a hive. They have to understand how they will give the VP PR the capabilities, information, knowledge, so he can come to the CEO or the other management members and tell them, hey, that's the way that I'm thinking to cope with the problem, to cope with the crisis. So in the operational stage, we need to build under each sub-manager the capability to handle the crisis in his own domain. So that's most crucial. A lot of time, I find myself that the organization, they're doing the teaming stage excellence, but they don't understand that if they won't build the capability of the sub-manager under each VP's capability to manage cyber crisis, to understand what is cyber crisis, what's unique in cyber crisis, what is our role in cyber crisis, what I have to do. So you find yourself that after 2 months, no one remember what they did in the teaming stage. Usually they use a tabletop drill. Everyone forget what were the insights, and they don't build the right capabilities, the right checklist, the right contingency plan.
You've said it twice now. Checklists. I remember being in an exercise, a drill, where someone very senior said, I'm not going to go read a 20-page playbook. And that gets to the importance of a single sheet, a half sheet of what that checklist is. When did you get to that aha moment of, and it sounds so simple, but again, this is what I've found so effective in working with you, is when did you get to the point that it was write all the playbooks that you want, have all the program management, but get your checklist down, because that's what you're going to tear off when we do have an event?
It was in the Army. We dealt with a lot of crises, that most of them we succeed to contain. But what we understood that even if you're doing a lot of drills and write a lot of, a lot of documents, things like that, the war will never happen like you drill it. And there are a lot of uncertainty. You don't know what will happen. But what I found out, and this is my experience, that the first 24 hours are crucial. The decision that you will make in the first 24 hours under a lot of stress, under a lot of fog, and you don't understand the entire picture, are the most crucial, that you will find yourself in containing the crisis in the shortest way, sorry, and in the most effective way. And in those first 24 hours, the question that you need to ask yourself are an assumptions, and that you can think about it. What you have to do in those 24 hours, they are based on assumptions. Think about them right now under the neon light. Wrote one sheet, no more than that. Not small, not the smallest font, but not in a font 8, so you can fill one page like it was 4 pages. No, write yourself the first 10 decisions that you need to take. Write yourself who do you need to sit beside you. Just write those 10 questions that you know that you will need to answer in the first 24 hours, and who will sit beside you. And I promise you, from a lot of experience with a lot of cyber crisis, and not only cyber crisis, that there is a big chance that you will contain the crisis in the shortest way and in the efficient way.
This gets to another item that you have not yet mentioned, a scenario type or an exercise drill around a ransomware malware that you really don't care what the event is. This is scenario agnostic, what you're looking for, the type of disciplines, right?
Until the third level, if I may.
Sure.
You're absolutely right. The teaming and the teaming and the operational are agnostic to the scenario. But the most mature level is not agnostic to the scenario. But let's talk about the scenario, not from what will happen in the cyber. Let's talk about it from the business point of view. So I would call it the black swan, or the core problem that we may have. I will give you an example. We did a process like that, the third level process, in the company that I work right now. What I did, I asked my CEO, what's really bother you? If we have cyber crisis, a major one, please remember, he's after teaming, he's after operation. I asked him, tell me, what worries you the most? So he told me it took him 1 minute of thinking. I think that he had the answer in 5 seconds, but he wanted me to think that he was thinking, but it came to him very openly in a minute. He told me, Gadi, look, I run here $100 billion of saving monies of our customers. In each moment, I need to answer 2 questions. Does the money safe? Something happened to the money of our customers? That's the first question. And the second one, look, we invest this money in stock exchange, etc. I need the ability to work in those markets 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I need the ability to work with foreign banks, with stock exchange. Give me those 2 abilities to be clear that all of the money is safe. No one stole the money from the company, and the ability to work in the stock exchange, banks, etc. And that's the black swan. If I don't have those 2 main capabilities, we can shut down the business. So regardless if it was right or wrong, the ability of the CEO to identify those black swan scenario, what's trouble him the most, that's the higher level of maturity, because practically what I did after he said that, I've started to work on contingency plan with all of my colleagues so we can tell our CEO, hey, we promise you, no matter what will happen to our system, you will be able at all time to verify that nothing happened to the money that we are dealing for our customer, or to know that something happened. It can happen, cannot, but you will know that. And second of all, we'll give you the ability, for example, to work in the stock exchange, to work with foreign banks where you held your money and things like that.
So let me ask you, so I don't want to put you, given that you've been in financial services in Israel, in banking, in insurance, not to make this a personal experience, but what are some things that the cyber practitioners should be thinking of in these black swan events? For example, the core banking system goes down, or the core operating system goes down, or the ability to do any bit of contact with client lists goes down. If you think about it from the CEO's point of view, what are some things that technical operators should be thinking about?
For example, I would tell you a practical example of solutions that we gave. For example, we have subsidiaries that work in a very similar business area like us. So the system are very much the same, the regulation are the same, and things like that. The ability, of course, it's not a good practice for long term, but you are under crisis. You have to work with what you have, and it has to be sufficient. So let's work in their system. Our subsidiaries are not connected to our network, and we are not connecting to them. So maybe there's a chance that we will be attacked and they will be attacked, but in the end of the day, it's not, the probability is low. So let's work using our subsidiary system. Let's build the capability to work with them. Let's think of this today. So here is a problem that we have. For example, working in international markets and at stock exchange, etc. One of our subsidiary working those areas, so we can use their systems. Now you can say, hey, maybe there will be a regulation problem, things like that. But the regulator, he thinks, hey, I want this company to run the money of their clients. So in the end of the day, the regulator know to make the difference between crisis and routine. In routine, they will kill us if we will work with our subsidiary systems. They are not good enough for a big business like us. They don't stand with all of the standard, but under crisis, it's legit.
Yeah, I'll give you another example in liquidity risk management. The run on the bank type scenario that happened last year in regional banks. What regulators have done for years is show me, if you're having a run, what is your primary, what is your secondary, what's your tertiary, et cetera. Where are you, bank, going to go get more liquidity? Oh, we're going to go to our parent bank. Well, presume your parent bank is knocked out. Okay, we're going to go to our biggest loans and look to recall them as best we can under the legal provisions of the contract. Those are out. Well, before we get to the discount window and we seek government help, government bailout, maybe we have a bond issuance on the side that we have money that we can then tap in a contingency. And so for cyber and most risk events, what are your primary, secondary, tertiary, and then black swan opportunities to try and save the firm? Let me give you a prompt on something else you and I have talked about. Who cares about the tabletop exercise? What are you going to do after you have conducted it? What have you learned? And I think that there's been a woeful deficiency of follow through and really understanding that the exercise is not at the, if you want to use a sports analogy, is not at the 5-yard line. It's at the 50-yard line. because the next 50 yards is actually, what did you learn? And then are you going to make yourself better? So talk about that, maybe the resiliency process, the way even a ready firm should be getting better and better and better, and not just conducting one tabletop once a year or twice a year, but that this is truly ongoing maturation.
It's all start in understanding what is the role of the tabletop drill. I will say it like that. A lot of organizations, because it's written in, for example, in the regulation, hey, you need to have a drill once a year. This is the regulation here in Israel in financial sector. Do a tabletop drill once a year. And I think that also in the US there's the same regulation. A lot of organizations come to that issue, want to mark V. Hey, we made the drill. And a lot of organizations do that. And they don't understand that the drill is not the purpose. The purpose is building the contingency plan, and the drill is a tool to validate the efficiency, the expected efficiency of your contingency plan, of your, I would say, checklist, whatever. So the drill is a tool in your toolbox. It's not the purpose. If you understand that, and you understand that you have to build an efficient contingency plan, an efficient, those 10 questions that you need to answer. Hey, the CISO came to you and tell you, dear CEO, we have a cyber crisis. Adversary did to us this and this and this. Don't invent anything. Open your drawer, and I must tell you, in the two financial institutes that I work in each VP and specifically in the CEO drawer, there is one page that I wrote from there. Of course, I work with them in a plastic bag. What do I need to do in cyber crisis? Open the drawer. Don't open the file in the computer, because maybe there won't be a computer to work for you. And here are the listed 10 questions. Here are the ones that you need to see beside you, so you will make the right decision. We thought about it. You know that. Know what is your black swan scenario. Ask directly, what is the situation in those 2, 3, not more than that, issues that worries me a lot. Start to give orders. And I'm sorry that I'm talking like an officer in the army, but we need to understand that crises need to handle not like in routine time. Everything needs to be efficient, because time is in the heart of the matter. And I think that it's something that makes cyber crisis different from other crises. And Paul, if I may, I want to emphasize what's, from my perspective, is the main differences between cyber crisis and other, for example, business crisis. The first one, it's a new area. So as a management, we are not familiar with that. By the way, 90% of the CISO will handle cyber crisis first time when they are in the CISO role, not as a part of the CISO unit. So I would say it's something that you need to understand, the lack of knowledge, because it's a new area. The second issue, that we are used to handle business crisis. For example, you give loan to a big client and he had a bankruptcy. You deal with that 100 times. You're going to deal with that if you're in the financial sector another 100 times. You know how to deal with that. You know how to contain that. When it comes to a technology issue, specifically if it came with a PR problem and reputation problem, and the regulator is sitting on your head and drilling it, it's something that you're usually not used to handle with. And I would say it's a very dynamic area. It changes all the time. For example, right now we are dealing here in Israel, like in the entire world, with deep fake, when AI is combining with cyber capabilities. Hey, there are a lot of examples when someone saw on a Google meeting like we are holding right now, the CEO picture talking fluently, the video runs smoothly like we are doing right now, but it wasn't the CEO who gave him the directive, do that or that, move, transfer money from here to there. I read months ago about a scam like that that was held in Hong Kong. Look, they stole $100 million. I will tell you, they invested in that scam $10 million. Wouldn't you prefer to invest $10 million and get 100 million? It's a very dynamic. The answer, of course, is right. It's the great investment. Who don't want to make 10 times on his money? So it's a very dynamic area. It changes all the time. If you think as a business, as a CEO, as a PR, that you understand what you need to do in the cyber, the CISO come to you and tell you, hey, there's a new scenario. We had to deal with that. And it's always dynamic.
Let me ask you a question about there's a cyber breach. There's a failure. There is not just financial harm, but as we think of what happened in October, the loss of life, and now we take it from the private sector event to the public, to the human, to the government. What do you think happened when you consider where Mossad sits in the IDF and the level of respect that those intelligence and defense forces are given globally, given the perspective of what happened? What do you think happened?
I think what happened to us, it's like it's an open wound here in Israel. You must understand that, because I think it's what happened to us. It was something that happened to the entire nation. We thought of Hamas like they are like us. For example, we cope with jihadist warriors that cut. I don't want to get into the details. But we had to fight with jihadists, most extreme Islamists, and want to emphasize that I have Islamic friends. I'm not talking. It's not that, but those were fanatic. And we thought, hey, let's give them to working visas in Israel. They will have salary. They will build houses. They will have food and things like that. And they will, we got out from Gaza Strip. There are no Israelis in Gaza Strip. They have their area. They have money. We give them electricity, water, etc., etc. But we didn't understand that they are thinking different than us. We had a conception. We thought that they are thinking like Westerners, and they have different way of thinking. And I think that we didn't understand that, and the attack happened in a Jewish holiday. And there are not a lot of soldiers. Not everyone, but most of them were on vacation. We didn't understand that this will be the scenario. A week before that, there was a meeting in our government. It came out so on the public that, and everyone told, hey, the Hamas they don't want to get into fight. They don't want to get into war. It was a week or 2 weeks prior of that devastated attacks against us. So, and I want to take that into our cyber issue discussion. When you're dealing in defending, you need to be humble and to understand that you don't understand in 100%, even though in 50%, the way the adversary is thinking. Don't mislead yourself by thinking that he has the same logic. He has different logic. He's thinking in different way. If I'm concerned with privacy, for example, as a human being, I'm doing a difference between leaking of private data, and from the other end, that someone will steal money from the company that I run to. Stealing money, it's much less than stealing the private data of our customer. That's an holy grail. You know, it's as an insurance company, we know what your physician told us about you. Very sensitive PII information. But adversary, for them, that's the main attack vector to make ransom. Just that they won't publish it. So that's a different way of thinking. You have to be humble and to understand that the way that you're thinking as a legit man that work in a big firm, that work in cyber area, you're thinking in one way, but the adversary think differently. When you understand that, you will be very effective. Think like an attacker.
Yeah.
Don't take it home. Leave those thoughts at work.
No, yeah. No, I'm with you. After, I mean, a generation ago, 9/11, the former intelligence officials and even the intelligence officials called it a failure of the lack of an imagination on the part of U.S. defense and intelligence, thinking that who would turn airplanes into missiles. Focusing on the positive, you know, my experience with executives is the first time you go into a room and you go through that full exercise. Again, we're not looking at the bold-faced name of the CIO and the CISO. It's the one who's going to take the seat the farthest away because he or she doesn't want to be called on. And what can you do to get them into that position of comfort? And even if that's the chief executive, the message is today is going to be your most uncomfortable day, and you're never going to be this uncomfortable again. And if you keep doing it and you keep doing it, and you keep doing it, not once a year, twice a year, you will then become your own bold-faced name in your function, which I think that's the message of today's discussion.
Well, I think that I cracked that problem, and I tell you how. Because remember that I said that the drill is not the purpose. The drill is how to validate your contingency plan. So I'm starting, not in the drill, I'm starting building with this sub-manager. Let's continue to use our VP PR. I'm starting to work with him on his contingency plan. I'm building his ability and confidence that he could manage cyber area, the cyber crisis. He is understanding what is cyber. So when he will come to that room, he will be with real confidence. He know what to do. He know what he have to update the CEO and other member of the management. He has a contingency plan. He know how to, he has a dashboard where he can show all of his fellow manager what is his situation awareness, how do we understand the situation. So, and from that, I want to say that from my experience, people learn the most from success, not from failure. And if you're giving him the ability, the real ability, to come to the room with the right answer, but real one, not it's not artificial, it's a real one, then you don't get into that scenario, as you mentioned, which happen a lot. You're building a real contingency plan. And another thing, when we're doing the top table drill, we can validate not only the solution that the specific VP came with, we can see how it works with other contingency plans of other VPs. Do their plans talk one to each other? Do they understand? Because in the end of the day, the VP PR need information from the CIO. What is the situation with our system? Because they have to tell the public, hey, in 2 days, system going to be brought back again. So, hey, do you know that you have to ask him that? So we, not only that we are gaining his ability to to run his responsibilities, we have the opportunity to validate that each contingency plans work like an orchestra. Each one knows its own role and how to play together in harmony.
I'm ending it there because you just said something that I've said for years about risk management. You might be a great singular instrument player and you might be great at improvisation. And you and your band may have been doing that for years and years and years, and your improv is just dynamite. That's not what this is about. I cannot believe you just said that. I've always talked about the importance of the orchestra because everyone really knows what you're supposed to be doing as you go through it. And it's just as beautiful music, but it's a hell of a lot more effective when that proverbial S does hit the fan.
Great minds think alike.
And with that, I will thank you so much. My best to you. I can't wait to see you, and I can't wait for the closest sunrise. Where I remember in Tel Aviv, Jew, Muslim, Christian, non-denominational would go out at the water and they would barbecue and they would play volleyball. And I know you're going to see that tonight because I actually hear that it's still happening. But I can't wait to share that moment with you soon. My best to you. Thanks so much.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye bye.